to the Cryptozoology Show Part 6 with more mystic items. We got some reliable Sasquatch witnesses, some pretty funny, bizarre, naughty Sasquatch encounters, a little bit more on Zeus and the God connection, and also we're going to be a critic as written in there that she's pretty skeptical of some of us humans. As so is this guy here. He says, "Yes, I exist," says pot smoking Sasquatch Omar Van Nichols. I'm tired of critic Joes out there saying that I do not exist. So he looks pretty Sasquatchy to me. He's got a big reaper in his mouth there, and he's not concerned, and he certainly knows that you know what I mean. That they're able to evade us. So he's and I mean, look at how intelligent they are. They can even pose for photos and that sort of thing. I like that. So anyways, we got a funny, a more weirder show, this one to cover, and that we got some magic rings and the ring of Gyges to different ones, right? And some more wacky stuff and some interesting Sasquatch encounters that are totally right out there. But anyways, I love this photo, but you can clearly see, like I showed you in other shows, right? Imagine this guy having 4 or 5 children. Now imagine they can live like a group of them 40, 50, 100 years, whatever, right? Like some kind of range in this sort of thing, right? So they're out there. The children right away are born in a cave-like environment where you're having to dig every day and move and do like... It wouldn't take long after so many generations of this stuff going on, right? If you were born with a giantism disease, sort of gene, and this over hypertrichosis like Omar here, right? Sort of thing like that, right? Well then, you know, you could clearly see that a Sasquatch-like creatures could easily sort of exist, right? Because here's one right in front of you. Even though this is a regular guy here, this is with hypertrichosis, probably having a smoke. But the thing is that it clearly shows that a wild human could have the same kind of attributes, right? So that's why some people are more furry than the next, right? And that sort of thing. So only the ones that are the furriest and the strongest will actually survive the event. See, if they capture like and you see this every year, thousands of people go visiting, right? In these national forests and all this kinds of stuff of just regular things out in the woods, camping and all kinds of weird things, right? So if there is more than what we think of these sorts of little groups of feral-like humans and some of them are quite big, right? Well, depending on how long that they've been around, with they grab some maiden or some Sasquatch lady grabs some guy and this sort of thing, and both have occurred, right? Well, then the offspring, maybe a couple might get furry, but maybe some won't, right? And these are the ones that most likely are not going to survive the event because it's cold, it's this and that. These guys are used to taking care of their own kind with all the stinky fur and all this sort of thing. But the gene may be so strong that and even the girl, she probably never survives this stuff. Like even after she's had the baby, as far as you know, they do something to them. Who knows, right? Like, I mean, because they're primitive humans a lot of times, right? I do agree that there seems to be also wild apes mixed in amongst this, but a lot of these things are actually primitive humans, and we just can't believe they can get this big and all this macho, but they really can. And I mean, look at this guy. Look at how furry this dude is. I mean, if you seen him in the woods and he didn't have the reaper in his mouth, right? You know what I mean? And let's say this guy happened to be a taller guy, 6 foot on him, right? He's a Sasquatch, right? Like right away, because you get a lot of reports, some say the guy's skinny, and maybe he's malnutrition in this area, there's not enough macho food to get him super, or that he was a feral guy, right? And that sort of thing like that. But the thing is that this is what I'm saying, that he still has an ability to survive because he has all this fur and all that sort of thing. It's interesting, what surprises me, it seems that when they do take women and have a child in that, and if they get the Bigfoot like thing, they really do seemingly only a certain small amount probably are inheriting all the things you need, like including these thick feet. When the Russians, like when the Russian general, one time in a cave in the 20s, right? They were investigating it. This Bigfoot guy came out. He was super strong, unbelievably powerful, but he was only like 5 foot something on him. And they said that he had thick feet and calluses and all that kind of thing, right? So this guy was not a normal giant Bigfoot. He made it only because he was a medium Bigfoot that happened to have all the right things. He still had the thick feet, flat feet, and the different things he required to more survive the event out in these kinds of wilderness areas, right? So, I mean, this is why that even them, like let's say there's I don't know, a tribe of 40 Bigfoot that all live in Mount Shasta, right, under the caving stuff, right? So every so often they have some kids. Maybe some of the kids don't get some of these things. They're born frail, blind, they can't this and that, and it could be that they don't make it, right? So only a small amount keeps the population going, because one out of two, let's say, if the gene's really prevalent, then maybe like 3 out of 10, you know what I mean, might have all the features they need to survive through the whole thing. And then other ones, they're not going to be able to do so, right? So think about these sort of things like that. Like, it makes much more sense than why they can invade us. They're primitive humans. They're just giants, some of them, and they become much more stronger and all this sort of stuff. And the longer that this tribe-like group has been carrying these genes for hundreds to thousands of years, some of them or whatever, right, in the most wildest wilderness areas where they haven't ran across a maiden to capture too often, right, and that sort of thing like that, the gene pool probably stays the best, and more are born with all the right features you would need, right? But once you weaken it, that's only a lesser amounts, right? But some tribes, because there's way less of them, right? Like if there's only, I don't know, 5 of them in a 2,000 mile radius around there or something, right? Well, then they need to, get some mate, right, and that sort of thing like that. So I mean, it all kind of makes sense in a lot of ways. And I mean, seriously, if you saw this guy running through the woods, you would say he's a Sasquatch. Yet he's just a regular human being, right? And this is what I'm saying. People just aren't getting this aspect of it, really, and why in the wilderness, like when you see a big gym macho, right? You go in any gym area, you're going to see them out there in the California beaches. Look at me, I'm Hercules. Look at me, ladies, kiss me, worship me. Like all that kind of stuff is going on, right? Well, then there's that's from fake doing that, right? But can you imagine you're forced to do this to survive 24 hours a day, right? Well, it wouldn't take long that the next children might inherit some of this stuff, and eventually you're just born like a little Popeye right away, right? Sort of thing like that. And that's what I'm saying. The ones that aren't, they don't survive, and they probably die in the cave or wherever they were born, and they dispose of them. Maybe they bury them like a humans would, right? Like if they're advanced enough. And there's different groups of them. Like I said, some seemingly can speak languages, and all kinds of variants are out there, primitive to, and I suspect that there was some of the ones that could speak the languages were actually like a female survived somehow in the area that they were holding her. She has the children, and she was able to teach them some of her language, and that, but the children carried all the Bigfoot like stuff to them, right? So I mean, think about that. Like it's very feasible how these things and all these stories of people being captured and that sort of thing like that. We have one on here that a guy had posted out that was really interesting. So anyways, we got more stuff here to cover, so stay tuned. War rings, the ring of Gyges. Plato mentions this. I don't care what anybody says. They doubted Plato multi times over history, and every time the guy proves to be accurate, right? So, me personally, I think that this skepticism is a bit out there. I think that we're ignoring history, and I think that we're fools by doing this, right? Like, I mean, we're getting more and more pathetically historically stupid by every decade. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Like I just even saw something today that this is hilarious. I saw maybe I don't know 5, 10 years ago somewhere on the internet, and he claimed that these Egyptian scientists just discovered this tomb where it showed that they proved that they did early brain surgery and all this kinds of things so that it was successful. This is how low IQ that we are. We're not even remembering things that was already discovered decades previous to that, and then new guys are trying to take credit for it. Even in a Bonanza show, the guy talks about that these Egyptians were doing a brain-like surgery over 1,000 years ago, and this is on a Bonanza show in the '60s, right? So I mean, yeah, you know, like even Bonanza had more IQ than than a lot of the people of today, because they think they're discovering new things that really are really old stuff that was already mentioned multi times by other people, right? Everything from the Sasquatch phenomena to you name it, it's always been there. It's just modern people, because they live in this internet Bugs Bunny world, they doubt these things, but because they live in a little, yeah, you know what I mean, a little content, bubblish like environment, right? And they don't understand what's really out there and why anybody's skeptical of a hairy human being or somebody bigger than the next or any of that stuff is completely mass foolishness. And why any person would be skeptical that it'd be easy for a giant guy to hide out in the woods when they're 5 times stronger than us, bare minimum to 10, maybe more, right? And also have the intelligence of a human and all these kinds of things. And even people like Plato, Socrates, all kinds of people mention these things, from lycanthrope people to living in the caves. They were shunned and pushed out there. All this stuff, this is all historically accurate things, from the two kinds of squids. A giant octopus and still isn't accepted, yet even a carcass have been found, right? The St. Augustine is a princess, or that kind of thing. And even a modern scientist said fully, no, it is really an octopus, but they just ignore it, right? So there's a lot of strange individuals out there that live in a bubblegum-like world that can't understand much. It seems like the IQ of the average scientist is getting lesser, except for people like Forrest Gallon. Don't give. There's occasionally one out there that shows some promise, right? But a lot of them certainly don't. And I mean, this stuff is endless of this kind of thing, right? Like of our lack of knowledge of our history, that we keep thinking we're the ones inventing something when it's all been done before, multi times, right? And these kinds of things like that, right? So I mean, but it's really interesting. But this ring of Gyges that Plato mentioned, he was given to this peasant guy, right? And this guy was like a sheep farmer, so he goes out, he seduces the queen, he killed the king, and took over the whole kingdom. But he was given this by some mysterious entity, right? And these kinds of things. I believe a lot of these things were actually based on some kind of bizarre super, where a guy like Yahweh guy or some space alien, whatever the case, right? Any kind of scenario like that, doesn't matter at the end of the day which one was really doing this. Somebody from our skies is influence certain aspects of society because they needed it to go a certain way, and they knew these kinds of people would be trustable with this supernatural like weapon or whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, look at some of these. Like, there was this archaeologist that found the Tutankhamun's tomb, right? While others perished, he was the only one that survived the damn thing. And he claimed that this was a mystical ring that was given to him, right? And that sort of thing. And it had these bizarre symbols on it that can protect you from all kinds of stuff. This ancient ring was found. It's in a collection, right? And inside it's got this huge, seemingly incantation that nobody can fully understand or decipher. But it's seemingly, some of the words are similar to something you would use in some other spells that they found for a healing like spell. So I find it hard to believe that a human being is going to go through 10 zillion little microscopic insignias in there to read it all out, sort of thing like this, right? Unless there might be actually something to this, like so that you could remember it, right? And that sort of thing like that. I mean, before the Smithsonian Institution, magic was believed fully worldwide by all cultures in this planet. What magic and technology is the same thing, really, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if some guy says unga bunga jinga bunga 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 zuka bunga 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 bunga, right? Well, maybe under that kind of thing that this guy created it, this big mighty ruler, that these sorts of things open up some kind of command somewhere to tell something to do something, and it will be done, right? Just like King Solomon's ring and all this kinds of things, right? You have all these ancient sort of things here that are very bizarre, right? And there's so many of these that it makes you wonder, but why did this guy not die and all the other ones do, right? Yet he was exposed exactly the same things, and he's the discoverer of it, right? So fascinating, right? And this sort of thing like that. And there's even been bracelets and all kinds of things that are belonging in different museums that have very strange, like, spells written in them, right? I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning of the show or not, because I got cut off and I was in a hurry, but if I did, I can still see this in my mind. I watched this movie, I think it was in the later 60s maybe, or something like that. I can still see it now. What was it called? Or maybe it was early 70s, somewhere in there. Anyways, it was called the Shaggy DA, right? And this guy finds this ring, and I can still see it. This is the only way I can remember, because I'm lousy with names or all kinds of stuff. I can't even think of the actor's name. But I can see it. The guy turns it, and he says on it, in canis incorporate transmuto, or something like that. It's like Latin. I guess it would mean like, you'll change into a dog, like you by saying this enchantment in this ring, right? And that sort of thing like that. So how do you know that there was these wacky stuff, like I said, Circe and these other ones, right? How do you know that these weren't some kind of supernatural, like, sort of stuff going on here, where it's some kind of ancient technology or whatever that they imbue in the ring that shoots out a signal? Like, let's say demons and angels truly exist, which I fully believe that they do. Okay, so that is an entity, cherubs, all these things are beings from the sky, right? So whatever that they are at the end of the day. So would it not be feasible, considering we could talk to people with an invisible ray, right, in a cell phone, shooting beams across? This would be a more advanced sort of thing of this, where somehow the thing, by saying a certain things, it echoes through the air. The angel or demon monster or both, or whatever the case, right? Like, whoever is assigned to listen to this stuff, then by you commanding it, they'll come, right? And that sort of thing like that. Or some kind of magic thing to heal somebody, or all kinds of wacky stuff that these early Anunnaki, like fallen angels or regular angels that just, like the human, decided, oh, who cares? I don't think the Lord's going to be mad that I teach him how to, I don't know, heal a moose or whatever, right? Like that kind of thing. So a little stuff would have been given out there, right? Here and there. And I believe that these things might have actually some basis to them sometimes. I believe 99% of them don't, but I think that some probably do, right? And this sort of thing like this. Like I said, I also question, why would why would people carry around ancient books with wacky stuff in them doing these wacky codes out in the middle of the night and all this kind of stuff when there's never a basis. If there has to be something that gets them to believe to a certain point of some of these things, right? And of course, I mean, like, let's say I had some magic fishing ring that all I had to do was put it on and go, mighty Yahweh, provide me all, every time I cast out my line, I'm going to catch the biggest fish that's available in the area, right? Sort of thing like that. I probably myself wouldn't want to be handing out this ring to anybody soon, right? Sort of thing like that. So I could see why, no matter what, even if you use it wisely, that the person isn't going to be telling you all their secrets about it, right? Because they know that every person would desire such things, right? So I think that a lot of these actually had basis, but because of the flood, because of all kinds of things, a lot of this stuff was forgotten. There had to be a certain way that you had to do each one, right? And unless you do it exactly right, and speaking in the sort of the correct sort of thing, then probably the item doesn't work. Yeah, you know what I mean, like sort of thing, right? But I mean, it could be, right? Like there's a lot of things to this, right? But it makes you really wonder what really is out there. Like, I mean, because these things are found, and people took like ages to inscribe a giant sort of prayer or different things to do something, right? Like some kind of healing spell or weird things, right? So I find this like very credible to me that a person's going to go way out of their way to do such hard work if there's nothing about it, right? But if you were taught in ancient times that if you said Zunga Bunga Wunga Wunga, and you print all this out and say, Mighty Yahweh, you know what I mean? I need the mighty Angel Raphael or whatever, right? Any kind of thing, ones, right? Well, then these kinds of things, it could be that they actually exist, right? These magic mirrors showing you the future, because the guy says he knows the beginning, your end, all in between. He knows everything, right? So theoretically, this guy, because he created this stuff, that he also knows how everything would work, right? Like, or have some ability to monitor it all, like I said, right? I mean, the guy tells you he knows everything that you do. I still suggest to you very simply, they have, in earliest times, it was the angels themselves that was watching and guarding man, teaching them things. But then as it moved on and they had to hit the road, a lot of them, and allow the civilization to develop themselves, well, then they would make a presence occasionally just to remind you that they're there and these kinds of things. But you're not relying on them as much, and they're feeding you information without you understanding that, right? You know, like you got everybody from Tesla to all these guys that claimed each time some guy from the Pleiades or different sort of ones, right, came and visited them and things like that. And, so there's a lot of strange things out there, but to deny, I mean, I find even our IQ in general is kind of not very high in the sense that compared to these mighty ones, because I mean, the closed-mindedness of a lot of things, like one of the silliest ones of all times, the Hermes or Permes, whatever his name is, paradox, right? This guy must have been one of the most lowest IQ people ever out there. I mean, there is no paradox. The whole thing's a silly question, right? He's as low IQ'd as, what's her name? That silly group, that the only thing smart about them, SETI, that they were able to convince some idiots for 20 some years, conveniently that will get them into retirement, to look for supposed space aliens that would be too stupid not to know that we're here when they've been monitoring us since time began and even told you they created us. So the only person that is a paradox to is low IQ, unthinking human beings, right? It's not a mystery to anybody else. I mean, right from the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? Which I say is a slightly different than their interpretation. The real word of heaven means a place to live, and this sort of thing like that. So this heaven stuff is a more modern sort of interpretation of the skies, but I don't believe that that's what it really meant. I think this guy came from, because he says, one day of the earth is like 1,000 years to the Lord. That indicates to me that this guy came from a different time zone and this sort of thing like that. And that when he's creating this in 6 days, it's really 6,000 years and rest for 1,000, right? I just saw something else here that proves another thing about what I've said all along. Some guy said that the amount of people that lived up and down since time began, right, since the earliest human records, right, would be enough to reach almost to the sun and halfway back. Okay? So how ridiculous is that? Think about that. How many people that would be. Now you got to add tens, trillions, zillions of animals. If all of these actually was this old, right, like what they're claiming, right? Now humans, they claim only, depending on the guy, 100,000 to some new idiots claiming 25 million years ago. But whatever the case, even at 25 million, there is no way that humans were on this earth for 25 million years. It's impossible. They would have covered the earth trillions of times over, all the animals and everything. There would be mountains to the skies full of animals, debris, and everything else. It doesn't, that's not how it occurred. Right? So they may believe all this, but the reality is why this flood did destroy a lot of creatures. But in ancient days, the creatures lived way longer, and what we're seeing today are the same animals that were dinosaurs ages ago, but now are shrunken. And that's pretty well it, and they evolved into these different things depending on the land and all that sort of thing. So evolution is true in the sense that each family has an ability, just like humans, like when he says, let us make them in our own image, right? The sons of God, all these other mighty beings. Obviously, there's more than one, right? So each one would look different. Maybe one guy had red hair, some chick has blue and purple hair. Who knows, right? Like any kind of scenario, you would... that gene might be locked in there somewhere of all these different places, right? And that sort of thing like that. So that's why occasionally people come up at all kinds of different things like that. Because, I mean, you don't know what a regular godlike son, and because humans come in so many different varieties and shapes and sizes, from giants to little people, right? The same thing. I mean, they based it on them. How do you know that each god doesn't look a lot different from the next, right? Sort of thing like that. And I mean, look at this Vishnu character, all these different ones, right? Apollo and Zeus are similar, but I mean, then other ones aren't as much, right? Like, and that sort of thing like that. So all these things you don't know that are built into humans, that they just want to watch us like a giant experiment right from the beginning, from the most primitive versions of them to what it is, you know what I mean, and what hope we might have for the future, what will be like what they've forgotten, right? Because, I mean, can you imagine, right? Like, let's say this guy is, I don't know, 5 billion years old or whatever, right? You can't die and that sort of thing. Can you imagine the shit that this man has seen? Right? And let's say that you have by then perfect like computer like stuff where you can recall like, but I mean still maybe that certain parts of it is because you're such a mighty being that, I mean, yeah, you could pull this up, but you might want to watch what it was like and see like the natural entertainment of it, right? And that sort of thing. So I mean, all these things make sense to me. Humans would do the same thing. If some guy said tomorrow you could take a chimp and a dugong and mix them together and they're going to become a mermaid or something, right? You'd have all kinds of wackos trying to do this, right? And these kinds of things. I can see that, like, no matter what, there would always be people, gods, any kind of thing that would like to see what occurs when you do this or that, right? Because they're intelligent, right? And they made us in their own image, right? So we think at a just more primitive level. And in ancient times, they allowed us to know about them. And now they still do. You're supposed to accept that they are there, but more in a faith-like way. They're not showing you physically sort of thing like that, which is almost kind of unfair in a strange sort of way. I feel sorry for, like, I mean, if you weren't somebody like me that fully knows there has to be some kind of mighty entities in the sky, right? But I mean, if you didn't have some kinds of experiences that would prove this to you, it seems sad that the ancient people had a much easier way in that sort of way because, I mean, once you see this guy and the Zeus guy standing there, or the mighty Yahweh, or whatever version to come down, right? And the guy goes unga bunga and he shoots the lightning bolts all over the place or whatever he's doing, right? That's enough to convince any human being that yes, this guy is way more powerful than us, and he is a god. And yes, sir, you see what I mean? So then these guys kind of like. We're given a better warning out of the whole thing, right? Well, so what this is for now, a long time here, besides, strange events like the angel over the holy mound, and these guys are like the odd thing out there that kind of makes you wonder, right? But I mean, in general, they don't appear to themselves like they used to, right? Or at least they're not doing it to the average citizens and things. So there's a lot of strange things out there. But I mean, there is literally hundreds of these magic rings, bracelets, and all kinds of things worldwide that probably did have some kind of strange sorts of things to them, right? And that sort of thing like that. But as far as like this paradox stuff, same with the meme thing and other things, when they put these people on these shows and stuff, I find them sound the most lowest IQ, silly, romper room-ish type of people. And I don't mean to be rude, but that is romper room. The SETI people to really fully believe that we are so intelligent that we would have seen them or heard a fart from outer space from them by now. No, they cloak. They don't want you to see them. There's books 1,000 years old. Why are you ignoring SETI? Thousands and millions. There is millions, over 50% of the U.S. population claims at one time that they've seen a UFO, for God's sakes. I mean, so the only people that keep this going is the Joe Nichols that haven't seen one yet. But eventually they will, probably. Right? But I mean, until then, you're just gonna, you know what I mean? And even some people, even if they've seen it and the God guy came out, they would still be convinced that they must have just had too much fruit juice for dinner, right? Like, so there's always going to be strange people that just can't handle reality. And so when I laugh at them, I find them foolish, where they're ignoring history, they're ignoring the same factual things tens of thousands of times, like the Sasquatch phenomena. Never do you hear the Sasquatch from, he's only 4 to 20 feet, giant Neanderthal caveman, right? Sort of idea. That's it. And ancient ones even bigger, but in the last like 1,000 years, this is the kinds of dudes that you would get mostly, right? And that sort of thing like that. They always furry, non-furry, some got red hair, but it's always the same exact identical sorts of features across the board. Memes don't work this way, or any of the stuff that they propose, right? So they sound foolish to me, right? And same with denying that some of these bizarre rings and things. When some church is willing to guard 24 hours a day around the clock for hundreds of years now, what they believe to be the Ark of the Covenant, right? There's got to be some reason that somebody would do that. And it's more likely that it actually has some real basis to it instead of what they're trying to propose, that there's nothing there, right? Like, I find that very hard to believe. I mean, me personally, no matter how religious that I am, and I know fully well that there's a big guy in the sky, this Yahweh dude, right? But the thing is that if I was in there and I was one of these guards, right? Now I went in this room and I see that there really isn't anything there, just Bozo the clown, right? Well, then I'm, even being the most religious guy on earth, that doesn't rock my faith any. I just know these guys are crooks trying to pull a scheme here, right? So I wouldn't keep guarding this, right? So I find this hard to believe that you would get such devotion and none of them to rat out the other guys saying, no, there is nothing really there. You see what I mean? Like, there's something funny about that, right? So, but if it was all real and you fully saw these things and you believe that this object's there, well, then, yeah, you would do that, right? You see what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of interest in it. but anyways, we'll continue on with the next show there, where I got a bunch of more Sasquatch things and some other things. And a little bit more about some hairy tribes, some other strange ones, some more mystery cats and all kinds of things. I'm just going to continue on with this, but I just wanted to mention some of these rings and the mighty Circe and some of these ones, right? Because I find them really fascinating. And the other thing that I want to talk about a little bit here too, that I was talking about before, that I find very, very, very strange, and I mean very strange, right? Is if you look here, okay, the Temple of Zeus, right? We're all ignoring different things here. In almost any of the depictions you see, typically, Zeus, Apollo, different ones, they got angels with them, or some kind of cherub. Now, notice it's a female, right? These are cherubs. Why are you putting a Zeus guy that's supposedly like some evil king boss guy, right, of the gods, right? Well, why would you have, they're not going to put, some people theorize that he's the devil and all this. I don't believe this, because you're not going to have these holy angel cherub things listed amongst these statues all the time. They always, him and and his mighty staff and these kinds of things. I say this is just one version of him where he had to really show himself a bit more macho, right? And he's got these, and they showed that these cherubs were guarding around him, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I find that we're all ignoring this, because Apollo, all kinds of different ones, there's these angel cherub things, right? And proving that female angels exist, because I don't believe that God, Zeus guy, whoever he was, would have allowed them to honor him and put fake things on it. I don't believe this. So therefore they must actually really exist, right? And that sort of thing like that. And we're ignoring this. So again, this is really good, sort of a solid case here, that each time the guy Apollo, this guy, they're all portraying themselves with a different name, because the languages have all changed, and portraying themselves at different levels. So in here he's a bit more macho and intellectual, right? And another one he's talking to the more primitive native guy out in the woods or whatever, right? And he tells them, that he wants them to sacrifice the great deer once a year or whatever, right? Like he would give them a different way of following another set of directions, right? It's all the same thing. It doesn't matter which directions he gives you. At the end of the day, he just wants to see, will you follow these directions and follow a certain path that they want you to, right? And that sort of thing like that, right? So I find these things really interesting that nobody ever mentions this, but I would say that this is very high quality proof that really the angels, because angels are represented around Zeus and Apollo and these different gods, right? That there's got to be a correlation here. And because that angels are also associated with Yahweh, Yahweh isn't going to allow angels to hang out with some evil fakery guy of his. But if his name is that in that culture, and he represents himself in that way to these people to put his platform out, that would make sense, right? You see what I mean? Like, so all these things are very interesting, right? But we have a lot of mystery sort of things out there that make you really wonder, right? What's really going on. But anyways, we'll continue on next show. Next year, I wanted to talk about a little, I'll finish like I don't know, at the end there, I'll like put it all together, wrap it up, sort of thing. Basic, the whole thing quickly, right? Sort of idea. But right now, I wanted to talk about. Remember before I had bet anybody $1 zillion that Lorianne Winkleman was telling the truth with the Jersey Devil and her son, right? Because of historic records, because of 10 zillion reasons that I know from interviewing so many people over the years when somebody's telling the truth. And I knew this, right? And I was willing to bet anything on this planet. Well, the William Shatner show put her on, got lie detector people. They passed, both of them. Exactly what I said, right? And I guarantee you that this lady here, Mrs. Myrtle Walton, is telling the truth, and her husband. I would bet again $1 trillion that this lady was not a liar of any sort, highly class raised by her father, who was William Rowe. William Rowe saw a Sasquatch in the 1940s, right? He got his daughter. He wanted to send this to John Green, who I used to talk to all the time. I really liked him. He was like the sort of one of the earliest fathers of sort of really delving into just the Sasquatch phenomenon itself. A lot of the other ones were more like a multi sort of thing going, but he was like very specific, a Sasquatch sort of. And because he was a newspaper guy, he found all these ancient sort of things, right, and that. And but the father had to have been a really honest, decent guy for multi reasons. A, his daughter is meticulous. A 10 out of a 10 human being. I don't believe that this lady ever had a skeleton in her closet. Like, she's right up there with saintly sort of stuff going on there, right? Like, so, and her husband, the same, very decent all around. You can feel the aura right off of these two, right? So what had happened is that William Rowe knew his daughter could draw, so she made a basic figure. And then what had happened is he said, no, there's different things wrong here. So he kept working with her and working with her, and finally this matches to this. Now, conveniently, this is 100% matches to Patty on the Patterson film, about the same kinds of the lengths of the things, everything, the way her breasts are, and like all the stuff is. And that they have a wider rump and all that sort of thing, right? And she was chewing on some kind of leaf, I think, at one point as he was watching her, and that sort of thing like that, right? So her and her husband lived by a lake, and they would go out there every evening and watch moose and wolf and all these kinds of creatures, bears and all this sorts of stuff. So these guys are familiar with listening to all these creatures on a daily basis. They live there, right? So all of a sudden, this Sasquatch started screaming and stuff like this. This is years after this sighting, right? And that, but she knew her father was telling the truth, right? And that sort of thing like that. But the reason I'm saying I also believe for sure that this is real, because he kept making his daughter working for a long time here to finally get what he could remember every little detail in his mind, right? If you're making up a fake story to give a fake drawing that didn't even really, like, it's just your imagination, right? And your loving daughter here, who's very nice, right? Why would you keep making her go through a bunch of different things when it's not reality? Like that, even the basic Bigfoot she had first made, which isn't massively different, there was just tweaks all over the place, right? Why would you not? The John Green guy's not going to question this. He's just going to see a general look, and that's good enough, right? Like, you see what I mean? Like nobody, and the way she was raised and how honest and decent this lady was, man, I guarantee you this, like a 10 out of 10, right out there, like, churchy sort of woman here, like all the way, and same with her husband, right? So real decent, the two of them, right? So because then you could tell that her father raised her correctly, right? And that sort of thing like that. So I just don't believe this guy's going to go through hours of extra gimmicks to make his daughter keep reworking things for an imaginary thing that he never saw, right? And so anyways, the two of them were down there. They heard this screaming, like from suffering, and screaming like the most insane, powerful thing. So they played the Sierra recording for them, and they said it was very similar, except that this thing seemed more like it was crying or something, like some, like in a different way, but very similar with that power that it had and everything, right? And so both of them know all the animals around there, and so they were 100% convinced that they heard a Sasquatch, and they said it even sounded a lot like that Sierra recording, right? Very similar. So here is another quintessential reason that the Sasquatch, really wild humans / possibly a few great ape kinds as well, are this mixed phenomena that really people are actually, this is true, right? Like, I mean, there's absolutely the historic and all these things, and how people keep denying this is, I mean, how is it convenient that Roger Patterson not knowing the nice Mrs. Myrtle Walton here, right? And that, how is it that he manages within 15 minutes, he's following two tracks that had sets of tracks by two different Bigfoots that he had nothing to do with, that he found out about an article in a newspaper. He decides to track them, then he decides to call it Bob. They keep tracking them, and all of a sudden then they run into these third tracks, right, and that sort of thing, and they decide to go down into the Bluff Creek, and bango, there's Patty. How is it that he gets the identical thing here? I mean, really, I mean, come on, right? Like, so all these things are, there, each one could be argued with like not substantial enough, but if this was in a court of law and the thousands of documents from thousands of years ago to today, all telling you from kings that own them and everything, that people really believe that they didn't or don't exist, is foolishness, right? They do. I mean, this shouldn't be argued about at all, right? Like, I mean, 100% Sasquatch of different varieties exists, and there's no ifs, buts, or anything about this. It's not even debatable at all. It shouldn't be. This Patterson film is proved in a zillion times over by every experts and all kinds of stuff from the original film. Sorry, and that every aspect of it matches up. It can't be a person in a suit, right? And all these kinds of things. There's levels here that, and some of the footprints by credited anthropologists and different ones here that are experts at these kinds of things, right, are telling you that some of these footprints are truly real, right, and fossilized even evidence of them, of their footprints, right. I mean, I don't see how people keep arguing with this, right, sort of thing like that. And like I said, this re-evolution thing is very straightforward, that the human great that might have came from that Nephilim sort of thing, or whatever origin from living underground, and they become like this over time. The biggest ancient monsters are the ones that live in the most mountainous sort of isolated regions, right, where they developed a flatter feet over time, and because they climb up mountains and all this sorts of stuff, right? Whilst with the other sorts of variants of Bigfoot that may have been pushed out of these areas and finally moved different areas across, right? But the origins, I suspect, of the supergiants seems to be always like these areas across the world, Alaska, Russia, and these different ones, Canada, and some areas in the Northwest Territories, where typically the biggest sighting monsters are of these sorts, and they're usually in the mountainous sorts of things here, right? And that sort of thing like that. So this is the oldest variety we have of these guys, that actually are quite possibly thousands of years old from the floods, and just little groups of them survived in that. But because they have a habit of grabbing a poor Mrs. Myrtle Walton, she was going by, sort of thing like that, well then sometimes these lesser sorts, where some parts of them aren't as furry and other things may still survive because there's enough, or that they're just going to outright die if they don't inherit these genes and inherit more looking like Mrs. Myrtle Walton, right? And that sort of thing like that. So you can clearly see that in multi reasons that these things are very feasible, like in a lot of sort of ways across the board, that you have multi witnesses from the Patterson film to all kinds of things, of people passing lie detector tests, and this seeing anomalies out there, strange things that really do actually exist, right? Like look at this Here's one witness here. Bigfoot's real. I was knocked out and taken by one up a mountain to a cave, sliming over its shoulder. I don't know what he meant by that, but sliming, sliding, maybe he was trying to say. The cave entrance was blocked by a boulder, which he moved and then put back in place after dropping me inside. Again, what have I been telling you? There's 1,800 stories of this, and this is a guy in modern times here right now. I pretend I was still knocked out and dead, which that's what I would have done, the same thing. I would have pretended that, and wait till I hear it moving far away before I'd see where the hell I am and see if I can get out of here somewhere, right? So I can't blame him. He's a smart guy. So anyways, this guy, then the Bigfoot guy, went off to tell his buddies sort of thing, and it went quiet, and it was very dark. And so I guess that's why their eyes glow. So again, like this nocturnal habit, especially ones that are older generations of these, may have developed a better eyesight at night just naturally, right? You hear of this of certain tribes that can see really well in the dark and that. So it would be quite feasible that that, of course, could happen in a furry tribe. I mean, what would be the difference, right? So I managed to snug my way out of a tiny opening and made my escape, finding a nearby road where I was picked up and taken to Yo Hospital. Everybody's into this Yo stuff nowadays. Police took a report where every time Bigfoot was written, they replaced it with a bear. When Kay called for a copy of the report, I guess the two guys from the FBI that visited me had something to do with that. I even showed them the area that I ran out of but couldn't find the cave again. They probably wiped them out and dynamited the cave. I know most won't believe the story, but it's true, and it happened to be on Mount Mitchell, North Carolina. Right? So, I mean, these are crazy things that even in modern times, right? And this is what I'm telling you. They have an underground network of all kinds of stuff. You hear these stories too. One Bigfoot guy shot at a young one that leaped out of a hollow. I suspect that this is the ancient ones built these underground tunnels to escape the flood, and maybe just had this habit now of starting to keep digging and protecting themselves in the future if a flood happened again. I suppose that a primitive human in that sense could think these things up, right? And that sort of thing like that. So and maybe this is why there's these tree branches that are broken in certain areas. Like, let's say it's bent this way, that, it's like a language, and he says, yeah, secret tunnel, 5,000 yardums, right? Like, ooh, right? Like, sort of idea, right? So now these weird things, because nobody would lift up these giant boulders all over the place. Could you imagine even trying to get like the construction and all that? Like, I mean, what am I trying to say? Right? Like tractors and all these kinds of things to get this stuff out, right? Like, I mean, how would you get this way out in the middle of wilderness where they probably hide these half the time, right? And in city areas where if they're stuck doing some route, it must be underground, right? I mean, this occurs here right in Ottawa. I went to a parties in the 70s in this bazaar. It's near some convent of some sort of thing, right? And that it was super Catholic around there. And some characters had actually dug this gigantic rooms underneath the ground, and they hid it in some bush area. So they rented out like parties, right? And I went to one of these, and they said, okay, you can't look any further, look down on the ground, do this, that, and you'd be led to this thing, and you go down this ladder, and all these cutie pies be there usually, right? So it was a great place for a young guy in these eras, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I don't know. I mean, it was ages ago, and then I'd heard that somebody ratted on them or something, right? So I don't know. I'd never been back to it after. I went like a couple of times and things like that, but then after that, I don't know if it still exists or what had happened to it. But anyways, so this is very feasible. That I mean, if people can't even notice that in a urban area that these people are doing this wild construction out there. They probably did it at night, some gang, I'd imagine, or something, right? That sort of idea. But that sort of thing. But that's is very feasible that simply they're intelligent enough, and like I said, blank hard drive, possibly even space aliens tell them to do this. I have no idea. Like any of these kinds of scenarios, it's feasible that they could build underground tunnels. They're always reported in caves and these mining tunnels and these lizard men. I mentioned that in Arizona, there's these killer lizard men. Some of these mines were actually blown up that had never been used again because so many people kept vanishing. They would drop down more rescuers and you'd hear them screaming, help the lizard men, and then they'd be dead. You'd hear them being like screech and like being torn apart and stuff. So something down there was killing them, and they others would go down. They wouldn't see any evidence for them for a bit. Then all of a sudden, there's more lizard men, and they would get them, right. So I mean, insane stuff. So the idea is that humans could evolve slightly different. I mean, in the darker depth ones, maybe they do become more lizardy, like where somehow they survive. Maybe there's hotter areas in certain tunnels down there that feasibly somehow from nearby underground volcanoes or something. Any kinds of scenarios like that. Certain areas feasibly you could have underground lush environments where actually creatures like that could exist and only rarely come out, sort of idea, right? So I mean, you have all these sorts of bases all across the board that, and it could be that they dug giant underground tunnel systems all over the world, possibly in other countries too, that would have a similar modus operandi here, sort of idea, right? So extremely interesting here. But like, here's some other words here, like in Ockham, Connecticut. All the natives around there in the region, they see quite frequently like hairy bipedal apes. The Penobscot tribe call it guacu instead of Sasquatch, and they live in their swamp-like areas. Two brothers that I interviewed found giant 19-inch tracks and heard rustling near them, and then they fled back to their camp in 2001. And another interview I saw of these two native brothers found giant tracks that dwarfed their bigger brother's 17-size shoe, right? So this area is well known for this sort of thing. And we asked the now more primitive version of Justin AI what he thought, and he says, "La love de guacu, la love le bat cinquante, la love gross reefer, la love a la Putin." So that's what he's up to now after his retirement there and the billions missing. That sort of thing going on there, right? So, it's all out there, but as you can see, I mean, it's quite interesting how it works, but I mean, all kidding aside, I mean, there's a lot of strange things out there that you could clearly see that it'd be very feasible, like I said, that Maria LeBlanc and these different ones, right? Like these different ones, some were captured that actually were able to be trained quite well, especially Maria LeBlanc. And also Peter, the wild man, improved quite a bit from at first being fully covered with fur. He was always still stayed fairly furry, but not as bad. I guess they groomed him fairly somewhat, right? And that sort of thing like that. And that quickly, that even then the body decides to do a little bit less because it may not be true hypertrichosis, just like Maria LeBlanc, but somehow in cases that either somehow this direct Yahweh guy, a space alien, or somebody zaps them with this protection right away and decides to child live, and they get the spur, and lucky enough some animal or some other wild person decides to take care of them, these kinds of ideas, right? And somehow they survived out there, okay? Or B, that they had hypertrichosis, but possibly because now brought into a more city-like environment, somehow the human body can adapt more quickly to get a little bit less, at least that's manageable, possibly. I don't know, like some kind of scenario like that, because it's very strange that both of them were super, super like a Bigfoot, a full Bigfoot sort of thing here, right? But when it brought an end to society and that, Maria LeBlanc actually didn't have any more hair on her face. She was extremely pretty, actually, quite cute. Sort of, like, I mean, if you had to get a Sasquatch girlfriend, that'd be the one, sort of thing like that. After she's had this manicure, right? Sort of thing like that. But she actually became, like I said, a high of society, got married off, and that sort of thing like that. And like I mentioned, other ones from where the king actually decreed some female to marry these hairy ape guys, right? And a lot of them had ape children and that sort of thing like that. So the idea is that very clearly we can carry on these things, and only so many in a cave is going to survive. Occasionally they do actually grab humans, but in remote areas, probably the machoest, big patty like sort of ones and the big Mr. Patterson sort of characters, they're the most ancient sort of one. But all of these can occur even now, and maybe doesn't take a zillion years, because the original, the kid comes out, he's a giant, he's got hypertrichosis, there's two brothers and two sisters, they go out and seduce some studs and studettes, and now have a bunch, maybe two or three carry that gene. Now you got a group like a little mini Brady Bunch. There's enough of this wackiness around that you could actually keep little tribes going for ages that could have these, and each group is going to, if they keep inheriting these sorts of ones, and the ones that don't, that become just pure Caucasian hair, not as furry as required, right? Well, then would naturally possibly die, right? And there, maybe they bury them, as far as you know, or any of these kinds of scenarios, right? So certainly, I mean, the Bigfoot phenomenon is real. There really is wild apes out there, and wild humans of different varieties, from ancient sorts to more modern feral sorts. I saw a video, actually, I can't find it, I was so mad. There's another proof of a Bigfoot-like creature that's 100%, that really is not a human in a suit. Impossible, totally impossible. So it's right up there with the Patterson film and the film from Russia. These two are impeccable, non-disputable. You can keep trying all you want. They cannot be duplicated by any trickery or anything. You cannot find any human in a suit or without a suit that can leap 25, 30 feet, 50 feet, and fly across a Titanic larger than a football field circumference in microseconds. It cannot be done. Impossible. You need 20 juice, like 20 times the speed of the juice here, like sort of stuff going on to achieve what you're seeing in that film. And the arm length is impossible. No humans have that. And all this stuff. It is impossible. Therefore, it is a real mink, Alma, whatever version you want to say, right? Because there's all kinds of them there. Who knows if they don't cross each other's areas and they're really all the same thing. Yeah, just different varieties. Some are smaller, some are bigger, depending on the region they're living in, right? And the genes that they inherited, right? So, I mean, these two, but there's this third one that this child may be actually still being held by the parents, but there's this strange farm that this guy filmed, right? These people are going by, and there's this Bigfoot-like creature that runs on all fours that no human being on this planet could do what this dude is doing. And he seems to be protected by some group of animals that are raising him, seemingly, because they all go with him everywhere. and he runs around. He's fully covered like a Sasquatch, super thick, black, darker fur. And I cannot find the stamp film. They don't call it Bigfoot or something. They got some weird name like Strange Sighting or something, or this kind of thing, right? And I can't find the bloody thing. Makes me sick. But if anybody ever recognizes it, please send me a note here, because I'd love to see it again, right? Because I'm telling you, this is real. It cannot be a guy in a suit. It's just some people in a car, and you can clearly see even somebody's filming the other person while they're filming it through their cell phone, and you can even see both things. It's real. It's 100% legitimate film. So therefore, this guy is super tall, really big, because there's quite a lot of animals, and I cannot remember what they were. If they were dogs, no, I don't think they were dogs. They were some kind of weird, like maybe pigs or goats or it could have been dogs, but it was some kind of animals, a big, huge pile of them out in a farm, right? And all of them were around this Bigfoot alien person, right? And this guy just runs around with them on all fours all the time. Like, and the most extraordinary speed you've ever seen. You couldn't get this in a suit. Like, I'm telling you, it's not feasible. This guy, and also these animals seem to have some huge symbiosis with this Bigfoot guy, right? So totally fascinating. So you could actually prove a Bigfoot human-like creature exists right this minute, because this guy seemingly lives on this farm, or at least is visiting it all the time, and the owners either tolerate it, or it could be their freak son, like I said, with this hypertrichosis, right? Or daughter, possibly, right? So it's a super interesting film. So if you ever looking around out there on YouTube and doing the Bigfoot stuff, I don't believe that it was actually listed under Bigfoot or anything like this. I was just looking cryptos kinds of things, right? I always like looking for new films and all that kinds of stuff like that, in all kinds of resources from everywhere. And I seen this thing. I said, "What?" And I mean, it's real, man. So, yeah. He really is like another Bigfoot guy, like here, right? So I can put him fully in the realm of the Patterson film, of the reality that that's for sure not a guy in a suit. He's extremely outrageously tall and long-armed. His legs and his arms almost seem like proportioned. So that's very strange, right? and he's totally covered with fur, like a Bigfoot. He doesn't seem to be super wide, but like wide enough, like not, you wouldn't say small either, right? Like, I don't know, a bit bigger than a skinny werewolf, let's say, right? Sort of idea. And that, so whatever this guy was, I mean, he's really alive. It's interesting that, so maybe the parents just keep him hushed up and he's homeschooled or whatever, and the guy runs around like a chip man of some sort, right? So these kinds of things. But anyways, very interesting there. So next sort of things there, we'll go on with the sort of a couple of lake monster films and some other things. But at the end of the day, you can clearly see that I'll show you some other primitive tribes that have been found that is truly real, and a couple of unknown creatures in the Amazon that were filmed that are totally legitimate, and as well as an ancient Philippines mystery cryptid that I find totally fascinating. But I actually know in the 98% probability, unless this guy's a real master, that this guy actually filmed, two films you can find, where they filmed these legendary sort of Japanese and Asian cryptids that nobody on Earth would believe in, but seemingly at least one of them in the highest probability, and the other one pretty good probability. A little bit less believable, only because it's so hard to believe it, but not so much of the quality of it. But I'm 98% sure the first film is legitimate. It's not CGI of any possibility. Therefore, there really is this bizarre cryptid that lives out there that's very fascinating. And this primitive tribe that never seen humans before, that's really out there. And I got a bunch of other, some new things and different things like that that we'll cover another time. But let's finally see these legendary films here that are really fascinating. But at the end of the day, I think you can clearly see, whether you're a scientist guy or anything of that sort of thing, that even if you want to say that the Darwin theory, there is some basis in the fact that you can, the a certain chain of a family can evolve into a pile of different things from that same major family and branch off slightly and things like that, but never, they seem to have like only so far you can go one way or the other. So you can look more primitive, behave more primitive, look more advanced, behave more advanced, right? In any kind of thing, from an animal to any a plant, it doesn't matter. And but you start with a basis with some kind of pre-programmed code in there, the normal sort of thing, and then the rest is learned by trial and error, and only in original times was only taught. There's no use teaching the chimp man, even though the chimp man exists with the intelligent guy in the village 100 miles away. Both of them exist. When you're speaking to these mighty ones from the sky, they just downsize it to fit the requirement of what these people need to survive, right? So there really isn't such thing as, again, that we evolved from this chimp guy in a cave and turned into, chimp Trudeau, and then finally evolved into modern man. Sort of idea, right? Like, it didn't work that way. Certainly not, right? Like, so it's very straightforward that somehow, any version from the Allah guy to whichever one that the people want to believe in, space alien guy, whatever, that somehow they help either create life more advanced it or created it fully. They have a genetic code in there that's like a living code that it seems that you can evolve quite quickly for your environments to go back and forth much faster than scientists think, and that all forms can survive all at the same eras and time zones and these sorts of things, and simply they look upon us like an experiment. They want to see the crooked maniacal version, like here, right, of this AI robot, and they want to see the goody two shoes. I don't know, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, right? Judy Garland. Oh, what a beautiful girl. I totally loved her when I was young, when I first saw her, and she was so skilled, right? Sort of thing like that. Just everything about her, a fantastic actress, right? And that sort of thing like that. But sort of idea, but that's the idea, is like, basically, right? So for sure, I just really doubt that we came from a blob of mud and all this. I can't fathom this when every culture around the world is telling me that they saw these mighty angels come down and this God guy and all this. It's much more understandable that somewhere all this stuff came out there. So I just can't believe that all this can be by random stuff, right? And I have seen myself personally unidentified objects in the sky that were not humanly made. I'm a zillionaire% sure of this, right? Because we're not that swift. We're like, I mean, by now, if it was humans all the time making these, there should be 10 zillion crashed spaceships by now, from Fred the drunk driving it and all that sort of stuff, right? So I really think this is true, that it's an advanced race from the skies. They have dealings with certain ones of us through either dreams or behind the scenes with powerful leaders. Well, of course, you're going to pick leaders to easily deal. Like, there's no use unless you have a specific, like, let's say he said, okay, Mr. Crypto, I need you to go down and catch a giant muskie because I want to feed it to this evil minion monster. Okay, right? So he could use somebody like me that's not as important, right? He might want me for this specific need because I have these kinds of abilities and could get the job done, right? He he would pick a guy like me, but typically for that kinds of specific things. But typically, if you want things done across the board, usually you're going to be speaking secretly with the leaders of something that really lead, like not the puppet prime ministers and that the real people that are leading these puppets, right? And that sort of thing like that behind the scenes. These guys deal with them, possibly some of them, right? And only the certain in crowd is able to still know that these entities are still around us, right, guarding us or whatever that they're doing, right, and of course the evil sort of ones as well, right, yeah, sort of idea, right? So that's the idea, but no matter what, I kind of think more that really, at the end of the day, that the planets and all these things are already here. This guy came from some ancient place where there was some kind of planet, like wherever he came from originally. It's a super slow time zone, with the guy sitting and creating things. Again, a day is 1,000 years to in his planet, right? So you could imagine the advancement. Maybe other places also had life on them already, and this guy more advanced them. Any kind of sort of idea like that, and he really is a god. There's always a boss, and that's what a god is. He's the boss. You say thank you, sir, or ma'am, or whatever, right? Like that kind of idea, right? Whatever the scenario would be, right? So that's and so, but our misinterpretations of these things, and even some of these things that he asks that may not really even be him asking this. It could be just human interpretations, and the same thing that when the guy came down, he might have said, hi humans, I just created you, I'm the mighty Yahweh, I want you to do this, that, and that. You've been bad, so now you're going to be punished and have to suffer out in the regular world, but you're still better do some sacrifices, do this, that, and that, and follow the rules and blah, yeah, all that sort of scenario, right? The guy might have said that, but then when people, these guys go away, right, of course, now when the cat's away, the mice play sort of idea, eventually humans start, and these angels find them entertaining, might start teaching them stuff, and all of a sudden one of them throws in a virgin as a sacrifice, and they're either told to, well, okay, well, watch this. We would have never expected that. Let's see how evil these people are going to be. And that's so now you're monitoring that sort of behavior or any kind of scenarios like that, that somehow a lot of these things may not have been dictated by this God or gods or space aliens or whatever version you want to believe in, right? At the end of the day, right? So that's the idea that for sure, like Giorgio and any of them would say, that there really truly is life in the skies. They truly created us, or at least helped advance us, right? And somehow these things are, but like I said, because the Bible is so accurate, I just choose to prefer to believe that scenario because of simply the everything it keeps saying ends up being true, right? Like, so, I mean, why not believe that version? It's no different than 5,000 other ones. As far as I know, these are translations from ancient times that really, like I said, it's all the same dudes and dudettes and different gods, right? That there's always a boss. This is the way he wants you to do the certain things. But if you're cavemanish, he's not going to get you to sacrifice a sheep if there's none around there. So maybe he'll tell you to, I don't know, smoke a big reefer or whatever, right? Like you sort of being like Trudeau's doing here, right? And that sort of thing. So whenever they would deal with them in each way, and just and all these things can go up and down, right? So basically, that's the idea. But for sure, we are being monitored somewhere in the skies. There truly is some kind of mighty beings out there, and they truly created us. And our Earth is getting in trouble again. And I hope it's not, eventually this whitewashing stuff again. But it seems now with all this wild stuff, a new Trump thing every minute, we could be the 51st state. Trudeau and poor Omar will be back in Guantanamo Bay with the experimental Sasquatch that they might have out there, and all that sort of stuff going on there. So those guys might be in big trouble soon. But anyways, we'll show you next there and that. But that's the idea again at the end of the day. But you can clearly see that no matter which version you would believe in, that it really could be that these things, right? And like I said, because in ancient times the earth was slow, our dinosaurs really were just giant versions of many of the creatures of today that still even exist, and simply that when they find these fossils and that, of course, they got killed off by this flood-like cataclysm, a lot of them, but not all of them. Certain ocean-surviving ones and all kinds of things certainly still, even in today's times, exist of a sea monster-like variety. So anyways, my imagination. I'm a 300-year-old Sasquatch lady, and I live in Northern Ontario. And my name is Jolene Van Nichols, and I'm told by my kin that people with no hair exist. I extremely highly doubt this very much. I doubt you exist either, Crypto Boy. My cousin in 1778 claimed that when he lived in Vermont, that these hairless people tried to capture him. He said the mayor of these hairless weirdo figments of his imagination lost because the citizens could not catch my cousin. Very likely my cousin was an Amnita death shrooms again. They claim too that some only have a bit of hair, and some even with a mustache, like the so-called skeptic Joe Nichols trying to rob my name, and besides, he's a man. Or some older story, my relative Betty Woodboose said there was a midget named Adolf Hitler, supposedly the leader of the hairless in Germany, and Betty said some hairless live in Connaught Chase, where she lives, and a pig man. As if I highly doubt any of these people exist or ever did. So, yeah, I'm kind of dubious of some of these people too, Jolene. So, thanks for the letter. This has to be John Gee that sent this in. It's gotta be. Okay, anyway, we'll go on with these hilarious... bizarre sort of so viewer discretion advised. There's a couple of really strange ones here that is a bit out there, so that are more of a sensual nature with the Sasquatch tribe. So here in 1984, a man was fishing in a kayak on the Nipigon River for sorry folks, I'm still laughing at that. Okay, for brook trout, and saw around a bend a huge hairy lady naked with large breasts, not as covered in fur as the rest of her was, and she looked to him and made a cooing sound. Ooh. She had long bangs, seemingly not much of a neck, and a big wide bottom, so she had the booty, and she was maybe 6.5 to 7 foot tall. He bolted, paddled away, too scared to even look back. One thing odd, her right hand had less fur than the left arm. Now, I had that run-in the Queon, Quebec, right? And that sort of thing like that. And there's native elders from especially Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec that will tell you about these things, but they don't like talking about it much, right? And the problem is that the tribes are small, in the typical sense of how many there is compared to the wilderness around them. It's insane. Like, Northern Ontario has like gazillions of, like, I mean, no roads, no anything, right? Like, I mean, wild stuff like even the U.S. wilderness in a lot of areas is way smaller than that, right? And you get gazillions of Bigfoot reports because more people are around. So I might be wrong all these years. I just thought that because of the trees and the weird climate and everything, that maybe not as many of these guys exist, right? Except certain areas like Sudbury, these mining areas, there seems to be like there was the yellow top guy, and he was really old. I think there were stories for him at least about 70 to 80 years, right? And that sort of thing like that. So a long time this guy was seen around. And that sort of thing like that of strange other similar like tales. And I interviewed a guy that might have seen actually Yellow Top. There was a whole bus load, including the driver and the school kids. I'm telling you, folks, it's impossible to get that many people to all agree with each other and all say the same exact things. You can't do that. One of the kids would have cracked. You know what I mean? Somebody would have, the police would have said, "Come on, kid, tell us the truth. You didn't really see anything. We'll give you a big bologna sandwich." And the kid's hungry, they'll crack, right? Like, so it's not feasible that many of them. There was a UFO case like that where this UFO came down in front of these African children, and I mean, there was like about 70, 80 of these kids, and every one of them the same thing. Like, I mean, it was in none of their stories are different, right? And exactly what occurred, right? You can't get that unless it really happened. So this bus driver and this whole bus load full of kids, right, saw this crossing one of their route, right, around Sudbury and that, right. So I mean, there's areas around that there's more of these sorts of sightings, right? And there's strange people out on the internet. There's some guy that has some kind of thing with Bigfoot in Ontario and that, and seemingly every week he has new footprints. If they were this common, more people would run across this because there still is a lot of the national parks and everything else that are used quite a bit, and the stories are slim because simply the amount of wilderness that there is and the amount of caving systems and unexplored areas and everything else, these guys don't need to come into more man-like areas and probably avoid them, right? And that sort of thing like that. That's why that camp, like even Christie Lake had these stories way back in the day, right? Because it was more remote then. And even today, it's still not really, it's the same kind of place, right? Like I was there, oh, 8, 10 years ago. I was out there fishing. And it's a wonderful walleye lake as well, and that sort of thing like that. But it's got like Titanic smallmouth in it, and muskies. Which there's a hilarious story ages back. I had this relative that was a lawyer, and I was already legendary before M5 here of destroying every single person in boats and this sort of thing, right? Like because I'd cast around the clock and could outfish any of these people, right? From experts to more average sort of ones, right? And so this guy, there was this big tournament and that, and so we went out. I got a 7 pound 1 ounce smallmouth, and I one destroyed the rest of them with that, and I got that. It's not the Tay River. There's the Christie Lake, and then there's this river that goes into it, right? And the tournament was held around the river, and this was in the '60s, right? And anyways, I caught a muskie, right? And so I bring this in because they had just all around big fish, right? So I said that'll destroy because all the pike in that Mississippi chain, like some of this river chain and some of the other ones, they're not as big as like some places, right? So even like an 8-10 pound fish, you might win easily with the thing, right? Sort of thing like that. Certain areas are like, especially the Mississippi River chain, which isn't massively far off, and all these different ones, right? Like there are certain ones where there are a lot of smaller fish mixed in, right? And only the rare odd monster is mixed in amongst them, right? So you have to filter through hundreds to find that one monster, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, I brought this in, and these people said there's no such thing as muskies in here, and he threatened to sue them and everything, right? So it was a big fiasco, right? But anyways, I ended up getting my a giant smallmouth prize, and I also won for some walleye one, but I came in second to somebody else or whatever, right? And that sort of thing like that, fishing with him, right? So, but the thing is not until early 2000 and something. I think it was about early 2000 or so, finally the Ministry of Natural Resources in this area, in that river that attaches to Christie Lake, caught a muskie out of it, so now they list them, right? And so I've done this in multi-species of waters, right? I would come in sometimes with other sorts, and they'd say, there's no bass in here. Yeah, there is. Right? Or that, because they'd have these weird ones like just big fish, right? And so you bring in whatever, right? Like sort of thing like that, right? But Ontario and Quebec, like there's certain areas that are just so remote that it's feasible that there's more of these wild population of ones out there than what we know of, right? Because if you talk to some of these native groups, they'll admit that they exist and they have names for them and everything else, but they don't like talking about it much, right? And that sort of thing like that. And seemingly in Manitoba, you get more sightings than you do in Ontario and Quebec, right? In typical. But I have seen these suspect channels pop up in recent years where these people, I've never heard of them before, they just, and each week the guy's got new Bigfoot footprints. I doubt this. So anyways, that's, because I mean, I collected a werewolf, some sightings, right? There's been probably about 40 over the years of a Bigfoot-like thing in different parts of Ontario, Quebec, and that 50 maybe, but it's small stuff here, and I suspect more to do with just simply the giant terrain, the lack of roads once you get to certain areas, right, and things like that, and massive thousands of miles of untouched wilderness, lots of areas. Well, these guys may live in these zones more, and we're just not going to run across them, right? And that sort of thing like that. But when some guy goes out Bigfoot hunting every week and he's finding new tracks and all this, and they're different even areas, right? I mean, there's something funny there, right? Like, so there's a lot of characters out on the internet, right? Sort of thing like that. But here's the one that thrilled me. This lady wrote in. I didn't even bother half reading it because I started laughing right away, and I figured, okay, I could use some laughs. So, but it was this one's fantastic. It says, "Hello, my name is Monica, and I liked your show on mermaids." Oh, thank you, Monica. And now, a few summers ago, I was swimming near Britannia Bay, and I saw this hairy guy with a large red foamy hat, and he was loaded with hair all over. He then came out of the water with seaweed and foam all over him, and he stunk like a skunk. He was surprised by me and leered at me in a sexual nature, and then screamed, "Allo, allo, babu? I'm not sure which one she means, but, or close to that at me. I wondered, maybe does he want aloe vera?" Well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what the first guy heard, because he couldn't tell what the guy's second word he was saying, and the guy kept saying aloe something, right? So you're You heard it clear, so the guy's saying, "Hello, Babu," whoever Babu is, right? But maybe you're right. Maybe it's aloe vera. Like, I suppose out there that water's pretty clear from now the zebra mussels and all these kinds of things that are around, right? So things like that. So maybe this the sun's intensifying on him, and he needed some aloe vera. So sounds good. Maybe you got the answer there. Anyway, whatever the reason, the creature, the creature, then ran his. It ran into the bush area of Old Britannia and vanished. Oh yeah, there's the forest, the Old Britannia Beach right beside it, that sort of thing. I suspect that this is this aloneness monster you guys reported before. One thing, he is tall and really, really smells. If you guys ever catch him, for goodness sakes, tell him to take a bath. I'm a model and I need a good tan. Oh my God. And he upset me by leering at me, stinking up the beach, and I went home early. So, like Seinfeld, I could smell him still on my bikini, even in the car. So gross. Have a good day. Hugs, Monica. I forgot to subscribe again. I will someday. Well, thank you, Monica. Oh, God. Oh, I'm too ill for this, man. I'm still recovering. Could you imagine? The only thing that upset her more is that this guy was wrecking her tan. Oh, Lord. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Monica. That's. Oh boy. Anyways, I like too. She said the creature. Like I think this guy is just some, hobo guy that maybe from the Middle East or some country where they wear these wrap things, right? Sort of thing. And the guy likes swimming, maybe, or something, right? Or maybe he's looking for fish to catch them. I have no idea. Like, it's got to be something like that, right? And this guy's obviously very furry, right? And there's a lot of them that are like that, right? You'll see some that are almost like a Bigfoot, right? So, but I find it hilarious that, and I'm sorry, Monica, I understand you're a model and it's an important job and all that sort of stuff, and that would upset you. I can understand it, but I mean, for an average person, the idea that what's upsetting you more is that this guy's ruining your tan is like priceless stuff here. Anyway, so whoever you are, Monica, thank you from the bottom of my heart. That's a great stuff. This one is so wild, man. So this is one I was more concerned about. It's a bit more ulterior out there. Okay, get a load of this. Dear Mr. Cryptozoologist, I liked your show on little people due to I saw one in 1979 on the island of Maui. Now, I was doing a little exploring and I went through a forest. At the edge, I found this little pond, rounded in shape, and out of the forest edge, and this tiny woman covered in brown fur that came out of the woods, except her large breasts were near bare, and she was seemingly aroused. I recall she had a skirt on and had her hand possibly in her skirt and moaned at me. She was maybe 2.5 feet in height and very tiny, maybe about 40 pounds. and I presume a lesbian due to I'm a woman. Now, I have nothing against lesbians, but like you, I don't like anyone too furry. Oh, yeah, I have mentioned that a lot of times. I got scared, and then I bolted off back to the car. I never looked back to see if she was following me. I was told later that maybe I saw a Manahuni lady. I think they are called. Sorry, I was too lazy to log in and subscribe. If ever logged on, I will. Sincerely, Melissa. Hugs and love. What is it with people with the subscription stuff? Why is everybody so that they can't even take 2 seconds to subscribe to the person? Like, I mean, a normal movie costs somebody like $10, right? And with all the information that even myself that I've given people right for free, right? I don't care. Like, even if I can influence 100, 500 people, 1,000 or whatever, right? And somehow this helps them, some tip I tell them or something, story, maybe they live near this area and they investigate further, and maybe somebody will get somewhere someday with one of these things, right? And that sort of thing like that. Uh, but I mean, this thing with the subscription seems strange. You know what Google should like? I don't understand why YouTube doesn't do this. It would make it a lot easier. Uh, you, if the person isn't logged in, right, and they want to subscribe, right, all you got to do is put their like whatever, some contact whatever they're under, right, and type it on this thing as they're putting in to subscribe, right? A little box comes up, and then you put on it. Don't want to log in, and if they're all paranoid that the person really didn't do that, they can send somebody that email and say, "Did you subscribe to this?" And then you click on it when you see it, right, or whatever, right? And then because a lot of people don't like logging in, they'll bug you about asking you if you're adult, all kinds of weird. So it seems that YouTube is saving billions by not like, I mean, it would be easier if there was some way where if the person doesn't feel like signing in and that sort of thing like that, that you still could subscribe to it, and that, because I mean, these people, like, there's too many of them now, right? And so it's all spread around in that, and a lot of people seem to not even want to do it, right? Which I mean, it seems strange. Like, I mean, why are you trying to make somebody more of a billionaire when each one of these people probably should get 10 cents for doing this, right? Sort of thing, right? Like, so, I mean, when I see ones I like, I'll subscribe to them, even if I don't ever go back there again. I just enjoyed the what they did for me, right? Like, sort of thing like that, right? I was mentioning before, I don't know if I put it on the other show or not, I can't remember because I was in the hospital again, but there's shows that are watched that are barely watched yet are fantastic. I saw this wonderful woman, nice, mature lady, cute, teachery looking, nerdish with the glasses and the whole do, right? Like, sort of thing like that. And super kind heart on her. And she did this wonderful presentation on the right whale, and it's fantastic. Everything about it is seemingly accurate from what I can ascertain, and she's very, very nice, and I would certainly date her, or maybe marry her. Who knows? Any woman that loves animals that much and all that, we're gonna get along, right? Like, and that sort of thing, like, and that, right? So, but anyways, she only had 4 people that have ever looked at the bloody thing. Like 4 subscribers, and maybe like a handful of views, even less than some of mine supposedly got, right? So there is shows out there, and then other people, it's a Loch Ness Monster, it's a Loch Ness Monster. Like, everything's a Loch Ness Monster every 2 minutes. The guy shows, how could the Loch Ness Monster be in Tennessee? How is he in Mississippi? It seems that the average brain dead individuals like this kind of stuff and fully believe all this, right? Right? And they're the ones that will subscribe to these things because maybe they live in a fantasy land. Who knows, right? but serious people seem to be too grumpy to even subscribe to the poor person when they went through all this grief and trouble, and all you'd be doing is finally helping them make 10 cents from what I mean, people that are making mucho dinero, right? Right? So I mean, these things, like, but I mean, so the thing is that I have on my other show there. The lady from Camp Davron or Devron or however you pronounce that, right? And she saw this big giant guy that was naked there, and he was trying to stop her booze, right? And it was all full of fur, and she said he was aroused, right? Like, but she didn't explain like why she knew that he was aroused, right, or whatever, right? So I didn't want to like get into. I was laughing too much, right? But she was such a nice older lady at the time, right? Like, I mean, I was younger, right? And I found this most extremely entertaining thing going, right? That this Bigfoot is a boozer, and he's like, what I mean, like ripping off her booze, and also now has a hot crush on her, right? Like, so the whole thing, like, but I've seen these other women with the same thing, right? And you fully know, like I said, I've shown you how many captures that there's been over the ages. But this is an interesting one from Maui. Like when I was younger, I thought that these Menehune were more like a spirit like sort of weird thing, right? Like ghost, like I for some reason I didn't really like. And then when I found out that they build like these ponds and these caves that have been found with miniature pottery and all kinds of weird stuff, these guys really existed and probably still do. And there's an actual photograph. This lady was at her wedding, and I don't believe people have better things to do with their day than to make up fake Menehune. Somehow they got some little kid that dressed up weird to make him look like a little miniature adult, right? Like, and there's been people that have seen these guys on all these islands, and I'm nervous for the poor little fellows and ladies here that are out in this some of these islands because there was big fires there and that. I mean, one of them could have gotten trapped or whatever. But some they claim that they'll hang up in trees, sit there like little statues, right? And I mean these little caves that they built and made these little furniture and everything. A person over 3 feet tall couldn't even fit in them. So I mean, these people are little, and so Melissa here, thank you. She saw, and I mean, if they are primitive humans, I suppose they would have the same yearnings, right? And like I said, there's so many of these of people being captured by Sasquatch and things like that, right? So I mean, the little Menehune lady, she wants a mate too, not the typical mate that she's going to be able to have another child with on this account, but I mean, still, you could see that this would occur all the time, right? And that, so I wouldn't be surprised that there's others out there like this, right? So, but this is what she kind of looked like, right? Sort of thing like that, and she was, so I mean, what can you say, right? So very interesting, anyways. But I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Like what's really going on out there and things like that. But other shows there will cover a lot more about that. But I'm a big fan of Jolene there, so I think she's real. So hopefully that wasn't Jean-Guy in disguise. Whoever sent this in, it was some weird email that like vanished. I tried to, and it said now it's not available. Right? Like, so, well, whoever, like, that's probably something Jean-Guy would do or something. But anyway, if not, if Jolene's out there, I want to interview, send me some more. Okay, folks, we'll continue on. We won't be able to finish this one off with the monster films and some of the witnesses and things like that. Yeah, so we'll do this on the next episode there and that. Oh, that's what I'd forgotten to say when I was trying to. I kept looking back in my mind, and there's a part of the word in this ring, and I keep seeing it, but it's really hard to see. But the guy says, "That's it." Okay in canis incorporate transmuto. Right, so somehow, in other words, in Latin it means like to transform you into a dog, right, like into a canis, right? Canis lupus, as a for instance, if you had said that one, I suppose you'd turn into a regular wolf, right, or what have you, right? But anyways, that's what it had inside the ring. I finally, I could see this blur of another word, right, and I couldn't get it, and so finally it came to me. So, but like I said, I got this strange gift, right? As long as I can see that picture somewhere in the movie or the different things, right? Then I'll get it. But otherwise, I wouldn't remember that sort of thing, right? I just remember the visual, then I can see sometimes what they're saying or different things, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, and we'll have some more, I want to cover some other hairy tribes and some more mystery cats and things like that. But I just wanted to cover some of these rings, and I have a few more that I wanted to mention and things like that. But the other thing too is that, again, people are missing this correlation between if you look at these older paintings and things like that, a lot of them, they have this interest more where a lot of them are female angels, right? Which makes you wonder that just simply because this book in the earliest time, the man was picked to be like the head of this sort of thing, right? And that it was designed more for like him being the head of the house sort of thing, the way that they wrote this. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these other things didn't exist. I mean, there always should be like and where did the idea of the female come from when cherubs or angels were first before humans, right? And cherubs existed. So what if that really, they're just not talking about them much, but I mean, they may have way more significance than you could ever believe, right? And that, I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? Like, there's been, there's a lot of evidence here and people seeing them, right? I covered on another show about these. Bizarre thing when I was in Oklahoma. This baby was found up in a tree without a scratch on it, yet a giant tornado ripped the house apart, picked up the baby, plugged this baby over a mile, and landed it perfectly in a tree. And even stranger, the baby seemed to be being held by supernatural forces. It was leaned forward and not falling out of the tree until the people came up, and then all of a sudden it's like as if something let it go when the guy started trying to pull the baby out, even though the baby had lots of room to fall easily and wasn't really holding on to like the stuff. So very strange, right? Right. And another group that was in Oklahoma, I believe, as well. All these kids, over 20, some of them were somehow miraculously saved by this mysterious wall. And they said that these butterfly people, angels, like little cherubs, right? Some kind of little butterfly people kept saying to them, don't worry, you'll be protected. And they kind of spread out their wings, was doing some kind of force field like thing to protect these children, right? So, I mean, these things are well recorded. A lot of strange stuff has happened over the years, and this baby in the tree phenomenon is not once, it's a multi-time thing. That means that somebody out there with, I don't care what anybody says, there's no way a human, in the normal sense of the word, could be picked up by a tornado and flung around a mile. I seen like right through telephone posts after a tornado just went right at the house, and it veered at the last minute, right? It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. But in the morning, it shot like pieces of straw right through a telephone post. So can you imagine what that would do to a little baby human swinging around there with all these boards and hay and all kind? Like, I mean, how could that be that they don't have a scratch on them, right? But it could be if these angels, like you can see on this film here, which I know must exist, right? If they really do stuff like that, and I mean, maybe cherubs do these things more often than what we're calling them angels, but maybe really an angel is just a guy and a cherub is the female version of an angel, right? But they may be just as important as far as you know, right? They're just not seemingly mentioned, right? Like, but I mean, they would all have their sort of purpose, right? And that sort of thing. I'm sure they're all important, right? So I just find this very interesting that I say it's impossible that a child could this could happen, especially not only once, but it's happened multi times here through recorded history of strange stories like this after a giant tornado, finding the child unharmed, right? Or in one case, over 20 kids here, I believe it was 20 some children, right? That's totally insane, right? Right? Yeah, sort of thing, right? And yet everything else is destroyed all around them, and they're not anything, and all of them telling you the identical story, not one variance in between them. I don't know, man. Right? Like, I mean, so even if you're skeptical, you've got to wonder. Children. I mean, there's no way you're going to get 20, 30 kids in a group that's going to be able to keep the 100% story for the rest of their life, right? It's not happening. It doesn't work that way, right? Like, so they're not structured enough and strong enough and all these things to all not somebody make a mistake, like if the mother says, come on Jimmy, please tell me the truth, son, or he'll break down for mommy or whatever, right? Like this kind of stuff, or Susie or whatever, right? That kind of thing. So it's not feasible that they all, but if they really all did see this, right, then it is feasible, right? So we just have to accept that we're in the hands of a much mightier powers out there than we are, right? And that this Sasquatch and all these kinds of strange things are really not that mysterious. If you look at the jungle forests, even of today, there's even more today in some areas than there was in ancient days, right? And way less hunted, right? So things are moving back in these spots, right? And some are pretty creepy, right? And that, but I mean, all these things really truly do have some kind of realistic basis to them, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I highly suspect that when females were designed, right, like there's female angels, seemingly these cherubs, right, and male ones. As far as you know, maybe he made it that way too, that they could have children. So maybe because he based slightly a human being, because they look somewhat like these sons of God and God, right, whatever they are, right, and that sort of thing. It could be, and even angels may look similar to him in some ways, except maybe they have these wings or something or whatever, right? Like that kind of idea. It could be that that's how he might have based a female in the idea of what he already had for these cherub ladies, right? With the same figure except without the wings. Like maybe the God and the sons of God don't really need wings, like they can just zap and go wherever they want or whatever, right? Like that kind of idea. But maybe the angels need wings if they want to fly around someplace, right? Or whatever, right? Some kind of idea like that, right? That could be that it was based off of a cherub, the human sort of female thing. So then let's say that angels do that, they just don't mention this, that they mate, and this is how they would reproduce like any other sort of things out there, right? Well, then maybe when they saw these females that now don't have these wings but are kind of different sexual, like enchanting and that, but similar like figure, like one of these cherub girls where they seemingly have boobs and what have you, right? Well, it could be that then that's why these sons of God found them attractive, right? Because they're like a new version of it's like women today. I mean, you'll get one that will dress like a biker chick, another's a disco down chick, a bluesy, what have you, right? Like, there's different bait out there, right? Like, but you can make a female look at multi different looks, right? Well, I would suggest the same thing, that because now humans were like this, right? And these different girls are born, some of them might have looked even like some similar cherub chick that they date in another whatever, right? Like this kind of thing. You could see maybe they might find them attractive, right? Because they were based, the human female was based on the daughters, let's say, of God, or possibly like these cherubs, or as far as you know, there's already was sons and daughters of God that they're just not really mentioning. They only mention once the sons of God. That doesn't mean the daughters of God don't exist either, just because they weren't mentioned, or one of these books haven't been found yet mentioning them, right? But let's say that presumably he's making us in our own image. I would presume that you would have probably a mate and stuff, right? Because and making let's make Adam and like man in our own image, and that doesn't necessarily mean, when he says man, he also means like, it could have even meant like man and woman, right? Like in other words, like I said, it seems a lot of times this was more based on like a readability for the leader guys of the earliest times, right? To make it concise and clear of what they want to occur and what's going to occur and things like that, right? So the female position wasn't as that, but I mean, even in Jesus's time, I mean, he picks Mary as one of it. Like, you see what I mean? Like, so obviously women were revered and also could be leaders and different things throughout different centuries, right? So he may have even realized that and changed his life. Who knows, right? Whatever the case, right? Like, but the thing is I suspect that could be the reason that these sons of God would find these mortals attractive, because maybe they based the female kind of on something that they already have for the sons of God, like the daughters of God. You see what I mean? Like that kind of thing, right? Right? And again, there's multi things here where the guy seems to not. He's never really telling you there isn't other gods. He's just telling you he's the chief of all the universe, right? Like, sort of, he's the big boss, right? Right. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that there isn't others out there and other strange things, right, that may be involved with all this sort of stuff that we don't understand, right? But anyways, we'll continue on with the next show, so stay tuned. Yeah, so, but for some reason it didn't shut off there, but I wanted to mention one other thing too, is that it's just, if you think about it, I mean, why would the guy, okay, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that, okay, you're making man in your own image, so now you got this, why is it that now he makes like a companion that somehow is similar but completely different here, right? Like to and to mate and everything. And he says, "Make man in our own image." That means that he, at least the man, should be similar, like in their image. So in other words, they may look something like that in typical, right? Well, they may have these kinds of things. And if that's the case, then likely there's also a female. And again, you would make a female mate to fit with him like they have. But you're not just getting a mention of them, right? And as far as I know, a cherub is like a servant like version of that, what they already had, like daughters of gods, God and other gods, whatever, right? Like this kind of scenario. Now you create these angels as helpers and things like that, and they might have been slightly a prototype up of these sons of God and all this sort of thing, but now they give them some other different little things to them, right? And that, and then you have like a female version, the cherub, right? You see what I mean? Like, so there's more to it. There's probably way more to it than what we could ever possibly imagine. But anyways, we'll continue on next show.